Welcome to our meeting of the Finance and Performance Committee. I'll open the meeting with a karakia. Whakataka te hao ki te uru. Whakataka te hao ki te tonga. Kia ma kina ki uta. Kia ma tara ki tai. E hiake ana te atakura. He tio. He huka. He hohu. Tihei moriora. So good morning and welcome. I'll start with item 1, the apologies, and I have a number of apologies to note. So a partial absence from Jani Johansson, an apology from Catherine Chu for lateness, an apology for partial absence from Aaron Keown, an apology for absence from Anne Galloway, an apology for late arrival from Sarah Templeton, and an apology for late arrival from James Goff. So I think that's all of those covered. I'm happy to move those apologies. Mike, you're happy to second? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Declarations of interest. There are a number of reports from the various companies, and we're just noting the interests because of councillors sitting on the boards of those companies. So they're just noted there in item 2. Item 3, confirmation of previous minutes. I'm happy to move those minutes. Do I have a seconder? Aaron? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Item 4, the public forum. There are no public forum items this morning. Item 6, presentation of petitions. There are none. So that brings us to item 5, deputations by appointment. Now we have 4 deputations this morning, all relating to the CCHL letter of expectation matter, which we're considering in public excluded later in this meeting. Now each of those deputations will have 10 minutes. And that's the limited time for the deputation. And because we've got a number of deputations and a full agenda, we will need to stick quite strictly to that 10 minutes this morning. So I would first call Chris Goddard from the Sustainable Terrace Incorporated Society. Chris, thank you for joining us this morning. There's a presentation which has already been provided. And Chris, you have 10 minutes to make your deputation to us today.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Chris Goddard. I'm a Terrace resident and on the board of the Sustainable Terrace Incorporated Society. The objective of this society is to make sure that the terrace community remains vibrant now into the future. Through your recent land purchase, the Christchurch ratepayers, the Christchurch Council, has become a member of the terrace community, and we welcome you to Terrace. The photograph that you can see up front there is the night sky from Terrace, taken from the border of the council-owned property where the proposed airport development will be. We have 3 asks for the committee to consider and, if deemed fit, approve. And they're all about driving a culture of openness where previously we have had a culture of secrecy around the terrace land acquisition. So with the letter of expectation, we humbly request that there is an immediate release of the airport draft business case and the draft plans that go with it. We would request an immediate release of the likely approval paths and the potential timeline. Why do we ask these things? This allows for an informed debate about the proposal with the terrace community. At the moment, the community is without real insight of what's being proposed, whether it's a 24/7 airport, whether it is a freight hub and a tourist hub, whether there is one runway or more than one. So with these things, an informed debate can occur. The last one, made somewhat more timely by the government announcement yesterday about state-owned enterprises being carbon neutral by 2025, is about an option to optimise our airport capacity in the southern region. This optimisation could get the full potential out of Invercargill airports, out of Dunedin, out of Queenstown, and especially out of Christchurch. There are many short and medium impacts to the Christchurch community in driving, even in the short term, domestic and international flights, passengers and freight into Terrace. And interestingly, when you look at the New Zealand government letter of expectation for the Christchurch airport, these themes do come through. The photograph here is of the Clutha Mata'ao, and it is slightly upstream from where the proposed airport's 1 million litre per day water intake and sewage discharge is likely to be. When we think about airports, we can see the downside. It is very difficult sometimes to see the upside. So there are some significant impacts to Christchurch and Terrace for the committee to consider. One myth that I hear repeated often by proponents of the airport and by members of the wider Central Lakes and Central Otago community is Terrace, it's a great idea, only 100 people are impacted. When you look at the facts, and we pulled the facts from the most recent census, there are 2,391 people near the proposed airport. If we make an assessment of the flight paths, and we make that assessment using community expertise, we have some aviation enthusiasts, some construction expertise in the Terrace community. I counted 10,458 people impacted by the flight paths, and my apologies for those who are eagle-eyed, Lake Hayes should read Lake Hawea in my presentation. Now, the Christchurch Council, the Christchurch ratepayers and the community share the impact of a potential development. As you'll know in the committee, dividends have been suspended from the airport by the public trustee, and that suspension is approximately 2 years, which is between $90 and $100 million of dividends the ratepayers do not see. Standard & Poor's talked very authentically to the airport's financial performance recently. 576 million of unsecured debt, a reported 23 million interest payment, and it was reported in the New Zealand Herald the China Construction Bank has had to provide funding to the airport to keep operations in the near term. There's reduced business activity and tourism from any move of traffic from Christchurch to anywhere, and that includes Terrace. So, from the Terrace community's perspective and from mine, it is very difficult to understand the economic, the environmental, the stewardship and the social benefits that an airport would bring to Christchurch or Terrace. One of the impacts, of course, is food supply. Taken adjacent to your land holdings is one of the many vineyards along the airport perimeter. I think this one is South River. And unburnt jet fuel on takeoff and landing is an unknown impact to health. So this land holding is one of them at risk. In the background is where Peter Jackson filmed Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Scene 17. The vineyard is called Scene 17. So there is always some very interesting local community knowledge once you've joined the local community and started to explore. So the impacts to both Terrace and community, very clear on the downside. My last point, the market does not need to trump the South Island stewardship that the Christchurch International Airport presents for the South Island. And we don't want to see either of our communities hurt while a number of competing interests argue about various airport options. We know that there is community outrage and impacts to social licence to operate, and some of the speakers today will talk more authentically than I can to those. We know that airports can talk very authentically about their reduction in carbon emissions, but as once was told to me, airports' sole purpose are to attract airlines, and airlines are the gateway drug to carbon. One of the impacts which is personal to the three of us sitting here today representing the community It will be a rural community changed forever from a farming community to a heavy industrial community based on the airport proposal. So to date, in all the conversations that the Christchurch Airport leadership have had with the Terrace community, not one of the community can recall or has heard of any direct or indirect local economic or local social benefit from the proposal. We hear benefits for the wider community, we hear benefits for the Christchurch Airport as a corporation. We hear some vague comments about tourism for the good of New Zealand, but local economic and social benefit, there have been none. So releasing the thinking, the plans and the mutual benefits will allow an informed conversation where the myths and the speculation that are through the Central Otago, Queenstown Lakes and Terrace community are replaced with facts. So closing, the last photo here is sunset from the airport, or proposed airport precinct over the Clutha towards the Pisa Range. Very beautiful part of the country for those who have not yet been there. Do the committee have any questions?
Thank you. We've got 1 minute and 18 seconds left. Are there any questions? All right. Thank you very much indeed for the deputation and for the information that you've provided in it. You've also certainly made your expectations quite clear through the deputation as well. So thank you very much indeed for the time taken in travelling here and also in presenting to us today. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So the next deputation, school strike for Christchurch. I would invite Kiara Foley to the table, please. So thank you very much indeed for joining us. Once again, you've got 10 minutes to make this deputation. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora, my name is Kiara Foley.
And I'm Mia Sutherland.
And we're here to represent School Strike for Climate Otatahi. Now, I'll be really honest with you. I'm pretty disappointed. And I had a really hard time figuring out what I wanted to say to you today, or rather how I wanted to say it. As a young climate activist, I am told that our movement and our goals are inspiring, and I know many of the councillors here today have said similar things to me and my friends about the movement we are a part of, which is why I find it so hard to be sitting here today trying to have this conversation with you. I remember sitting where I am now almost 2 years ago with Mia, asking you to declare a climate emergency, and I remember the hope and the pride I felt when you did. But declaration of a climate emergency means nothing if you are not willing to act by it. And the planned development of a new airport in Terrace shows me that you are not. We cannot afford to be developing an unsustainable airport that we do not need, especially when this money could be invested in far more sustainable local projects. I am ashamed to live under a council who freely calls climate activists inspiring and then turns around and does something so objectively opposed to our mission. You have the opportunity right now to do real good in the position of power you have, to stand up and speak out for what's right, even if you don't have the direct power to change it, to show that your ideals of climate action are true. This new airport will not be green or sustainable. Not until we achieve low emission aircrafts and building practices should these words even inhabit the same sentence as the word airport. We cannot go back to the same level of travel we had before COVID. It was unsustainable and actively endangering our future. We need to build back better with a climate over profit focus.
The Chief Executive Officer of Christchurch International Airport Limited has said that if this airport were to go ahead, then it would be at the cutting edge of New Zealand's drive towards a lower carbon future. However, we do not need these pledges and promises for a low carbon airport when we have the abilities, especially in a domestic setting, to reform the way we think about tourism and transport, which would make a far bigger difference in the long run. We should take advantage of existing larger airports and invest in more sustainable infrastructure for them and their surrounding cities like Otatahi. Encourage tourists to travel and experience more of Aotearoa on their way to popular destinations like Queenstown, rather than depriving many other places of tourists by funneling directly into hubs. Both of these things would overall be more beneficial for our climate and country. We value Central Otago because of its stunning landscapes, unique flora and fauna, and beauty. Building an airport here will only destroy the very reason it is being built. If the council truly values their declaration of a climate emergency in 2019, they will not endorse this idea and the destruction it will do to our planet. This airport is essentially a short-term investment. It will do more harm than good. Why are you investing in this when you could be making groundbreaking change in new domestic travel options, especially given how much time we have to adapt for tourists? I urge you to rethink the way you perceive travel, especially in our current climate, technologically, atmospherically, and globally, and not invest in a new airport. This does not make sense given your declaration of a climate emergency. Prove that this was not simply performative. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Melanie.
Thanks for your deputation. I, agree with your sentiment. My question, I guess, is: do you know that we were as surprised as the public when we found out about this? Because the companies are at arm's length from councillors, so we found out just before it went into the news, just like everybody else.
But you do have the power to support this in your letter of endorsement.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just so that you know that we weren't behind it in the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much indeed for the deputation. Some points very well made. Thanks very much indeed for taking the time to come along and address us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next, I would invite David Goldsmith from Extinction Rebellion Otatahi to the table. David, good morning. Thank you for joining us. As with the previous deputations, you have 10 minutes to address us this morning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for giving us the time to speak. I'm David Goldsmith and I'm speaking today on behalf of Extinction Rebellion Otatahi. This presentation is a brief overview of our perspective on Terrace Airport. We urge you to be explicit in your letter of expectation to CCHL, which you are voting on today. Please instruct Christchurch International Airport Limited that they must not expand or build new airports when we are living in a climate and ecological crisis. Firstly, the big picture. We are desperately worried about the future. For our children and our grandchildren, and for all life on planet Earth. We are living in a human-caused mass extinction event. Please don't believe that humanity can cleverly be immune from extinction. Our lives are part of an interdependent web of life. Even if humanity can avoid extinction, immense death, suffering, and chaos is ahead of all 8 billion of us, which the Earth will no longer support after catastrophic climate change, acidified ocean, and general ecological collapse, alongside inevitable war and conflict. Obviously, you already understand and agree that the situation we face is serious and desperate because you declared a climate and ecological emergency 18 months ago. Thank you very much for taking this first step, declaring the truth. We are in an emergency situation. The crisis feels overwhelming, beyond our capacity to acknowledge truly and respond to. However, there are some big picture truths that can guide our sense of direction. Greta Thunberg said, "Our house is on fire." I would add, "and our children are inside." The fire is fueled by coal, oil, and gas. We must turn off the tap to have any chance of saving our children. Fossil fuel takes ancient carbon safely stored underground and adds it to the carbon cycle. It is an inconvenient truth that we must end fossil fuel use to save our future. My second big picture truth is the dramatic surge in growth from the 1950s and continuing today across a large range of measures of human activity. This is called the Great Acceleration and includes dramatic growth of emissions, fossil fuel use, and international travel and tourism. A sobering fact is our climate heating emissions since the start of the Industrial Revolution have more than doubled globally since 1990. In just 30 years, emissions are more than the previous 200 years. Now consider the decades lag between emissions and their full climate effect, and the Great Acceleration is terrifying. My third big picture is described in the recent Oxfam report, Confronting Carbon Inequality. The world's wealthiest 1% emit double the carbon pollution of the poorest 50%. Since 1990, the richest 1% are responsible for 15% of emissions, leaving the poorest half of humanity only emitting 7%. Also, more than a third of emissions come from the richest 5%, and more than half of emissions from the richest 10%. The wealthiest 10% are what we would regard as an average income. The wealthiest 10% are also responsible for 75% of energy use linked to aviation. We are witness to astonishing and growing inequality in both consumption and emissions. There is also chilling intergenerational inequality. It is our children who will be paying the price for our present excess and inadequate response. Current responses to the climate and ecological emergency fall dramatically short of the problem. Our COVID response worked because political leadership was based on science and there was the public goodwill to act. COVID was an acute emergency and we responded urgently. The eco-crisis is a chronic emergency we have been well aware of since before the 1990s, but we have delayed any adequate response. The COVID emergency has shown that it is possible to swiftly take unprecedented actions. We are out of excuses for our woeful inaction on the eco-crisis. We are all in this together. If our response is inadequate, yet all of us are doing our utmost, then at least we could feel we're all in this together. But that isn't what is happening. Instead, we have Christchurch International Airport using sustainability greenwashing to justify plans to build a whole new airport at Terrace. Sustainability is peppered everywhere in their corporate propaganda. The Terrace proposal is described as a world-class sustainable airport. There may be electricity to plug into planes on the tarmac, and maybe electric trolleys to carry luggage, but there is no escaping that building a new airport is yet another step in the Great Acceleration. Quite apart from the emissions from construction, a new airport is another leap in emissions from the increased flight capacity and the associated expansion in tourism. It is like some of us are trying to run north to a truly sustainable future, but all the while we are all together on a speeding train heading south straight to oblivion. At this point, I don't know whether I should be raging or weeping. Those stoking the train accelerating south are justifying their actions using sustainability branding. Sustainability is not a brand. Sustainability is our children having a future or not having a future. We could be here arguing for the shutdown of international tourism altogether as part of an adequate response to this crisis. Clearly, tourism is a luxury activity. However, we are not here to argue that. We are here for a ridiculously low-hanging fruit, the building of a whole new airport. Building a new airport is part of the crazy, criminal, Great Acceleration of emissions being proposed by Christchurch International Airport Limited. We are not interested in your normal conventions of being non-specific in your letter of expectation, or arm's-length governance arrangements, or electric aeroplanes being used to justify a dishonest corporate sustainability brand. There is no escaping that Christchurch City Council is 75% owned by... there's no escaping that Christchurch City Council is 75% owner of Christchurch International Airport Limited. There's no escaping that 4 of you are directors in the holding company for that 75% ownership. And there is no escaping that we are in a desperate climate and eco-crisis that threatens our very existence. Now is the time for courage and truly facing this crisis together. Fossil fuels must end completely. We, the globally privileged, need to dramatically reduce our consumption and emissions. And the horror that I've politely called intergenerational inequality is actually us accelerating straight towards an atrocity that exceeds any previous atrocity in human history. We don't even have the words in English to adequately describe it. We have genocide and the more recently coined ecocide, but what word do you use for causing global mass extinction, possibly including ourselves? Anilicide? This crisis requires our courage, our clarity, and all of us genuinely together. Actually, it is asking for a team of 8 billion, so let's start here now. This is beyond distinctions like politician or activist. Those of us who are activists need to be sensitive to political dynamics, and you who are politicians need to combine your politics with activism for genuine, urgent change. We are out of time. Those of you who are directors of CCHL, if standing up for our children's future means risking some of your personal future, then so be it. Please have that courage. The numbers dying during my presentation here have been growing, representing the many who are already dying and those who will die. Climate change and mass extinction is a slow-burning, unprecedented crisis. To promote building a new airport in the name of sustainability is criminal, and future generations will clearly see its criminality. We are Extinction Rebellion. We are in rebellion against business as usual. We are in non-violent rebellion against criminal, corporate, sustainability greenwashing. Over our dead bodies will Taurus Airport go ahead.
Thank you very much indeed for the deputation and for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we move to our 4th and final deputation of the morning. I would call Chris Horn to the table. Chris, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Good to see you.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Nice to see you all.
So as with the previous deputations, you've got 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I hope to be quicker than that. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak here today. And I thought I might start with a little bit of, gratitude and thanks, because sometimes that's missing. So I'd just like to say I'm deeply grateful that the New Zealand government has now declared a climate emergency, and that we're a signatory on the Paris Agreement, and also that the CCC last year declared a climate and ecological emergency. So thank you for that, and I guess that's quite an important context. I also note that one of the City Council's strategic priorities is meeting the challenge of climate change through every means possible. And that as a CCTO, Christchurch International Airport has what looks like a sincere commitment to the idea of sustainability. They've clearly been doing some fantastic work on their own environmental footprint. So those are all good things. I also want to point out that we live in a highly complex and interconnected world, which has a few implications. And one of those is that black and white simplicities about what is right and wrong are always going to be at least partially wrong. There may be some positive aspects to this airport, and there might be some things that are beneficial in the long term. However, I would also say that while that might be possible, the way things look at the moment, that doesn't look like it's going to happen. And to add to this, since 1990, New Zealand had the second highest growth in emissions of all the developed countries in the world. And that's pretty bad, and Christchurch is one of the worst cities in New Zealand. So, we're not sitting on anything that we can call a good reputation here. We need to be really looking at ourselves carefully. And I guess the other aspect of this I find a little distressing is that international flights do not appear on our carbon emissions books. And that's part of an outdated agreement that was signed in 1944 that actually means that airlines don't pay tax on their fuel tax, and that international flights are not claimed by any country. So there's a whole lot of emissions going on that are not counted in the world's overall carbon emissions. And, you know, we're a long way from places, so our carbon emissions are much higher than they look, even though they're already bad. And I'd also say that airports, no matter how wonderful their sustainability policies, do not and cannot stand alone. They need airlines, and airlines need them. More airports open doors to more flights, to more tourists, to more road use, to more public expenditure on road and rail and on destination infrastructure and so on. And I wonder where the overall development plan for a piece of infrastructure this big is. How does it look in the context of that area? And how are the communications with the organisations that work in those areas? There doesn't seem to be any communication. They're as surprised as you were at what happened. So I'm kind of thinking, this looks like a competitive move to me. And in a world where there's a lot of interconnections, competition, and we're in a crisis, competition isn't going to cut it. We're not going to achieve any kind of change if everybody thinks it's still a good idea to compete, especially on big pieces of infrastructure where we actually need people to collaborate far better. If Queenstown Airport were to close, for example, if Wanaka Airport were to close, and with apologies to the Terrace community because there's a whole lot of issues there, maybe that would solve some of the issues. If electric planes existed, that might help as well. I mean, we've got little ones, but what are the chances of big ones? That's actually up for question. Legally, and we've been talking to lawyers to think this through as well, as a CCTO, the principal objective of Christchurch International Airport includes exhibit a sense of social and environmental responsibility by having regards to the interests of the community, and I know they really need to be thinking about communities at this point, in which it operates, and by endeavouring to accommodate or encourage these when able to do so. A CCTO must also achieve objectives in its statement of intent, including ensure the company adopts an environmentally sustainable approach to the operation of the business. And, you know, we can see them trying, but it includes things like land use, water, energy, waste, and noise management. And I guess increasingly it's going to include things like carbon emissions. So those things are part of the Local Government Act and the Statement of Intent. And yet, you know, developing a new airport doesn't seem like a really good way to achieve those things. In particular, in its decision-making as a matter of law, the 2050 target in the Climate Change Response Act should be considered in all decision-making on the proposed airport as well. So that's a new thing that's been a relatively recent thing that's come in. The Council's commitment to reducing emissions makes the 2050 target relevant to decision-making on the Terrace Airport, as well as the airport's objectives as set out in the LGA and its own statement of intent, such as it would be an error of law not to take that into account, according to one of the lawyers we've spoken to. So there are issues. You know, the RMA is going to change too, so we need to be thinking ahead about that. In addition to that, there have been some very successful challenges to the development of new airports overseas and to the extension of airports overseas. So this is becoming a thing that's happening reasonably well, and airports haven't been able to extend or to be built most recently. I would hope that's going to be the same in New Zealand. So, the other thing is I do wonder how they're feeling down in the Queenstown Lakes area. Certainly the people I've talked to down there, because I used to live in that area, aren't feeling particularly happy about Christchurch City, a Christchurch City-owned enterprise coming in and overriding their own airport, or at least competing with it. So there's some interesting stuff going on down there. It doesn't seem like a really good way to build relationships and the sorts of relationships that we need to be building if we're actually going to be meeting the climate change emergency, or the climate emergency. So relationships are critical to successful change, and in this I'm just going to step back a little bit. When I stand back and look at the idea of meeting the challenge of climate change through every means possible, I see a hugely complex task. You know, fossil fuels are in everything we do, and our ways of life have to change, our communities have to change, our transport has to change, a whole lot of stuff has to change, and that's going to be really hard. And you're not going to do it in a world that is all about competition. The only way I've ever seen change happen, and I've seen quite a lot of it happen, is where there's high levels of trust, where there are relationships where people are all working to the same goal, where people are looking out for each other and meeting complex situations with their own complexity. So, you know, with their own emotions, with their own feelings, with their own knowledge. It's not just about analysis and competition. And in fact, I think those things are going to get in the way. So I would say, yes, please change or make sure that your letter of expectation to Christchurch International Airport includes some of these things. And I guess I've been a little bit disconcerted by this arm's length thing and how that makes it really hard to find out what's going on and how transparent things are not. And I also would question, you know, who's benefiting from that and who's not, and who's paying, if you like, because as somebody on the community side of things, it's made it very hard for me and for us to actually find out what's happening. So I think the rules and the processes that you have around the arm's length may help the relationship between council and business, but they're actually creating a really significant layer of distrust between those two sectors in your communities. And that's quite a bind, because you need the rules and guidelines to manage the relationship with business. I get that, but you also need a way of helping those relationships with the communities that you're affecting here. No simple way to fix that. I don't think it's an easy task, but it's kind of a little microcosm of the sort of issues that we're going to face as we work through making changes that we need in order to meet the climate crisis. Without the trust of your communities, any significant change is very likely to end badly. And that's where I'll finish. Thanks very much.
Chris, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to come and address us this morning. And thanks to everybody who has come along and made these deputations for sharing your views and raising these issues with us today. The letter of expectation for CCHL, which has been referred to, will be considered later in today's meeting. But thank you to all of you for coming along and sharing your views with us this morning. Thank you. So we now move into our main agenda for today, starting with item 7, the performance exceptions report for October 2020. Peter Ryan presenting this one. Welcome to the table, Peter. So are there any opening remarks that you wanted to make before we move to any questions?
I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that before we get into the exceptions, we're actually performing at quite a high level. If you look at the overall achievement diagram, we're up around the 80% mark. Basically, the bottom line of this report is that we're down 6% on last year, so 86 down to 80. Given the circumstances of the COVID year, and given that a lot of those exceptions are around international visitors, and customers at our venues, we're actually performing at the same level that we did last year. So look, that's the opening to the document. It's also worth stressing that during this turbulent year, we managed to keep the lights on. That's a key point. Okay? All right. So as I said, levels of service dropped down to 80-odd%. Now, we have had that result in some other years that were not COVID years. So the new exceptions are Akaroa Museum visitor numbers. There are some changes to the resource efficiency levels of service caused by the COVID lockdown budget being changed. And the art gallery has a visitor number issue as well, which is not surprising. We don't have tourists. So that's the overview of the level of service results. Capital is a positive forecast. Very high results on both the watch list and the cycleways. Ruth will follow with the operational details around that, but overall the performance level is high. In fact, it's at a kind of historic high. And that's really the high level overview. From there, we move into the actual level of service exceptions themselves. As you know, I don't normally line by line those. It's on an exception basis. If I can answer a question on the spot, I will. If I can't, we'll take it away and report back rather than waste the committee's time. So look, that's the overview, and if anyone has any questions about a specific level of service or level of service comment, I'll be happy to address them or take them back for research.
All right, Peter, thanks very much indeed for those remarks. Are there any questions on this report? Yanni.
We finally got the memo on water supply and leaks, which I was just wondering in terms of these performance targets. We've got the 24-hour for urgent and the 3-day time frame for non-urgent,
Yep.
and we're about 36% of that target.
Yep.
But it's not reflected in the performance report, and I was just trying to understand how we have ongoing visibility of those sorts of response time targets.
The reason that they're not here is because they're not levels of service. We measure a lot of things that are not levels of service. So the short answer is, if you want to see that in these reports, they need to be levels of service to do that.
So where the report goes into...
Could you give me a reference on
Yeah, sure, page 23. So we've got the performance around median time from notification to resolution of urgent call-outs. Should be under 5 hours. So we do have some response time targets.
Yes.
But we don't seem to have... We've got a general satisfaction survey results as being the way we're measuring the other things. And we're still waiting, even though we know we're failing. So I'm just trying to understand, do we need to be more explicit in the reporting around fixing the leaks once they're reported? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not entirely sure where this is going, but I think that what you're looking for isn't actually a level of service. It'll be measured somewhere at a technical level, but I don't think it's a measure that is a level of service measure, and that's what this report is.
So it's a KPI.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to understand, at the information we're getting at this level, if it doesn't reflect what's happening with our KPIs, how do we pick up on it at a governance level?
When the activity plan for water comes to you, you can ask for that to be made a level of service.
Right.
That's perfectly legitimate.
Okay.
So what you see here is the tip of a much bigger suite of measures that we don't report all the time to everybody. But if there is one that you think should be taken from that group and put in here, it's easily fixed in the activity plan by saying that's a level of service we'd like to see reported.
Right, okay. Well, I mean, I seek advice from the chair and the organisation, but I do think we need to have a measure at a high level about the water reactive service requests and our response times and response rates.
So, Peter, can we refer that? We've got the Three Waters activity plans coming up in the LTP development workshops. Can we refer this matter to that workshop so that we actively consider it there?
Absolutely, and in keeping with a customer focus, it actually makes perfect sense for that to become a level of service.
Yep, so the right place to have that discussion will be when we discuss the activity plan, the relevant activity plan. That's coming up between now and the end of the year, so if we can refer this matter to that discussion, we can have a proper and well-supported discussion about it there.
I'll brief Helen Beaumont in the meantime.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any further questions on this report? Jimmy and then Mike. Jimmy.
Yeah, on page 32, I just want to know, particularly regarding the telephone inquiry. Here our target is less than 90 seconds, but actually it's 133 seconds. That's average or is average?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
do
my,
you
my
need-
question particularly in October, because the resident have some issue, ask me what's the status. I ring the 5 minutes, no any response. 5 minutes, actually 108 kind of, almost 300 seconds, no response. Two times.
Okay.
In the evening, yes.
That
So I
result will
just
be an
want-
average, and that will mean that there are some calls that went longer than that. But I can't speak to the detail, but Sarah Newman can. I can ask her for a summary back to that question, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
That would be helpful. Thank you. Mike.
Thank you. Page 22, the last exception down there, the actual says no data is available, as this is only calculated at the end of the year. But the last report had all the last 3 months data attached to it, so I'm just wondering why we're suddenly saying it's no longer available.
I'm sorry, Mike, but I don't have the same page numbering you do. If you could give me
Oh, okay, it's 12.0.7.
under what activity?
Water.
Water?
Water supply networks.
Okay.
It's the third one of the.
So there's consumption of drinking water per day?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
So it says there's no data available, but the previous report has all the data available.
Okay. What I think they're trying to express is that no final result is available, but monthly data will exist. You're right.
Yeah.
So you would like to see how it's tracking? Is that what
Yeah.
you're
Well,
saying?
if we've been tracking it for all the other reports, I don't know why we suddenly stopped tracking and say it's a yearly.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go back to the team, and when I brief Helen, I'll mention that one as well.
Thanks.
Yep. So let's go back to the team, as you say. If you can furnish us with the information that would have been available, or Mike is saying would have been available in the previous
Yes.
versions of the report for this report, and if we can make sure it's included as required in future. Thank
Sure.
you. Any further questions? Yanni.
I just wanted to check when the resident survey results are going to be reported.
They're normally reported in late April or early May.
So,
They're conducted through to March.
so for the water performance, do we have to wait until then before we know what those targets are?
If you want to know the end, yes, the end of year result, the reason for that is that they're conducted at the same time every year on the grounds that you get continuity of data. They've been conducted for about 20 years, and we do them at the same time so that you don't get seasonal variation in the data. So I can't really alter the timing of that program, but it does come in, I should point out, at just the right time to inform the LTP or annual plan as you're about to adopt it. So you've got the freshest possible community data when you consider your final long-term plans and annual plans. So that was the reason for that timing.
And that worked particularly well for the annual plan this year. The reporting of those results directly informed our considerations for the annual plan, and that's exactly the same for the LTP in 2021. So, Yanni, that answers the question? Yep. Great. All right. No further questions? So can I have a mover for this report? Sam, seconded Mike. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so now let's move to item 17. So this is performance reports, Q1 performance reports for VBase and Christchurch NZ. Now, we've got the Christchurch NZ team here for Christchurch NZ. Do we have somebody here for VBase? All right, so Tim, you're conflicted on this one, so you'll sit back from the table, that's fine. Let's just run through VBase and then I'll switch the chair to Sam for Christchurch NZ. So, Len, thank you very much for joining us. Anything you want to highlight from this VBase report?
No, in fact, as with everybody, they've had difficulties in the last quarter for trading, and that's flowed on to this current year. So I'd hope these reports are taken as a snapshot in time,
Indeed.
as at 30 June, and will be ongoing for, subsequently, so as at 30 September. So unless there's any questions,
Yep.
go through them.
Are there any questions just on VBase for the moment? No questions? All right, Len, thank you very much indeed. And then, Yanni, did you have something?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think,
Len, sorry, we've got a question from Yanni.
sorry, I think we've raised this before, but can we get some sense of how the community is accessing the facilities, particularly like the town hall?
Well, what happened with the town hall was the introduction to the volunteers, And so that actually has made the town hall more accessible. The arena and the other venues are more corporatised and therefore not so much available to everybody, but the town hall is the one that people want to go to. And so the introduction of those volunteers has helped actually reintroduce people to the town hall. It is the most used venue that we have, that VBase has. And once again, it's such a good asset for the community.
Right, but I think we were quite interested in just understanding how many community groups were using it, and what the barriers were. Like, in the past, for example, the high cost of catering has meant that it's cost prohibitive for groups to use the town hall.
Yeah, I mean, the VBase reintroduced catering into its suite of products it offered in April, just prior to COVID. So the spotless contract ended, and they are basically looking at ensuring that those costs are driven at a proper rate. So for catering, it's a new paradigm for what they're operating under. The venue itself has set fees, which are negotiated between community groups at the time of booking. So therefore, it becomes that discussion between VBase and the community groups themselves.
Yeah, okay. Can we just get a list of, under the venues available for local, cultural, not-for-profit and charitable, can we just get a list of who's actually used the facilities? That would be quite helpful, I think.
We can direct a question directly to the Caroline and the rest of the team at VBase.
That would be great.
We'll organise
Across all the VBase venues.
Yep, great. All right, thank you very much. So nothing else on VBase. We'll obviously pick that up in the resolution. I'll now vacate the chair so that Sam can chair the Christchurch NZ component of this report.
Hello, welcome along.
Hello.
Great, so do you want to run us through your presentation? And then
Handing over to Joanna. She's going to lead.
Perfect.
Kia ora koutou. It's lovely to be here to present on quarter one of our performance for this financial year. Thank you. Right, so just getting straight into our performance indicators. We are currently on track for 32 out of our 33 levels of service. The one where we are falling behind and seeking to remedy is engagements on our website, and that's due to some technical changes at the back end of our website, which has impacted search engine optimisation, and we'll have that remedied as we work through the fiscal. We're also operating within budget, and that's within the context of a reduced funding envelope from the Christchurch City Council, but that's offset by an increase in over budget of government funding as a consequence of COVID. So we've attracted government funding over and above that we had expected at the time we were budgeting. You can see our financial, makes more sense. You can see there our operating expenditure is broadly in line with where we had expected. The differential is based on just a variance of activity, and we're expecting to work to budget for the fiscal. So we've placed a very heavy focus on making sure that we continue to focus on shifting the perception of Christchurch with the key audiences that we're seeking to reach. We work with a research partner, Research First, monitoring the way that Christchurch is perceived in Auckland and Wellington, and also here within Christchurch. And we're really happy to report that there has been a significant shift in the way Christchurch is perceived with our key audiences in those markets. And you can see the headline stat up there that overall the willingness to consider relocating to Christchurch over the next 5 years has shifted from 14% in May to 27% in the next survey period. Now, what this shows us is the messages that we're putting into those markets are starting to land, and we've worked very closely with key media as well as with paid media to start to get through the message of the attractiveness of Christchurch, but also the affordability of Christchurch. And we've had really strong pickup of that messaging within national media, including with some significant commentators, including Bernard Hickey. So we're really, really pleased with that result, and we're expecting that to continue to shift as those messages get cut through. In terms of, and the other thing is we've seen a shift in the way that residents perceive Christchurch, and notably as with more residents advocating for Christchurch as a place to visit and also a place to live. So we're really pleased with that result. Moving now through to the Ōtautahi Socioeconomic Recovery Plan. As you know, we've been working in partnership with Council to formulate the plan. Council has signed off the measurement framework for that and also the focus areas for that, and we're engaged heavily with a governance group driving activity within the Ōtautahi Socioeconomic Recovery Plan, including with Mana Whenua. Moving forward. So in terms of the way the economy is performing over the reporting period, you can see there that significant dip in activity during the lockdown period and then the very strong recovery after that. The tool that you can see there is a tool that we developed alongside Treasury, which helped us monitor the economy in a much more timely way than we had been able to prior to COVID. Now this is really important because we're continuing to see variations in activity across the economy, and it's important we're able to respond to that quickly. You can see there that economic activity in Canterbury and Christchurch is up in comparison to this time last year, and that's really interesting to us, and it's important that we maintain that strength. That's driven by the strength of our primary sector, strong recovery in our manufacturing sector, a strong balance of trade, and retail spending is also up, and that's largely our residents spending money in our local retail environment. Now, in terms of that tactical activity that sits within the recovery plan, we're working with a large number of businesses to make sure that they are able to survive through this period, and we do this in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. During the reporting period, we've supported 2,400 businesses, and that is one-on-one support for those businesses to make sure they have the right support to survive through this period. Now, what that is showing us is that 33% of the businesses that we worked with say they are healthy or growing, 41% say they are surviving, and the balance have needed support to survive during this period or support to go into a mothballing status to enable them to be reactivated once this challenging period is over. Also during the period, we launched the Citywide Innovation and Entrepreneurship Ecosystem, and this came directly from the piece of work that was commissioned by Council to examine the effectiveness of innovation within Christchurch. As a consequence, we've launched a network of incubators to support the start-up and scale-up of businesses within Christchurch. This partnership will guarantee support for 55 businesses during every year for the next 3 years. And we're also preparing to launch an incubator program with MSD, which is designed to support people from unemployment and into self-employment, so to help people affected by COVID to move into starting their own businesses. And we're really pleased with that program. In terms of our support for Māori youth and skills transition, we've supported the GCP in the formation of the Canterbury Regional Skills Leadership Group, and we are just putting the finishing touches on a piece of work which is a workforce and skills plan which we're doing in conjunction with Ngāi Tahu, and that will be delivered to the Regional Skills Leadership Group in this quarter. And we've also mapped all of the support that's available to support skills transition right across Christchurch to make sure that there's no gaps and to help us plug gaps where they exist and make sure that we're not just putting in place programs that may have worked historically but won't work in the new context. In terms of our work with our mega clusters, clusters is a difficult word to use in this environment, but we all know what these are. This is the bringing together of large sector groups in the areas where we have strength. We've appointed a health tech specialist. We've run the health tech challenge in the reporting quarter, which brought together really innovative businesses who had amazing health solutions and helping them commercialise those into businesses. And we're just about to launch the food, fibre and agri-tech challenge, which is another of our large industry clusters. And whipping through, thanks Therese. We're working as a partner of government to implement 2 significant government funding initiatives designed to support the events industry. The first is the Regional Events Fund, and we've been able to attract 4.1 million to to Christchurch to enable us to invest in events to ensure that we've got vibrancy in the post-COVID period, and also the Domestic Events Fund, where we supported government to evaluate a number of events which needed some additional funding during the COVID period, and that saw 5 events funded by government, which was really significant in terms of the sustainability of those events. We're also partnering with government and have attracted $1 million in government funding to support these strategic tourism assets. We're using that to support marketing of the region, and you're seeing some of the success of that. We've partnered with all of the districts in Canterbury for that marketing campaign. We're also directly supporting businesses to pivot from international offerings to a domestic offering to ensure that they can survive during this period. Thank you. Now, some of the big signature events that we have worked on during the quarter, you're really familiar with many of these because Council has also had a role. So FIFA Women's World Cup, we successfully bid alongside other cities in New Zealand for this event. I do want to signal that we're still working through with FIFA all of the venue requirements for this, and they will be making decisions around the host locations later this year. Did I say later this year? Later this financial year, early next calendar year. Cricket Women's World Cup, again, really exciting announcement for the city. There's a significant government investment in this, as well as a local investment through Christchurch NZ on behalf of the city. And that was a successful bid, and we're really pleased to be hosting that event. Now, in terms of the way that we've been positioning Christchurch, the Explore CHC campaign, which was the partnership between the airport and all of the districts led by Christchurch NZ, was hugely successful. We gained 18 million impressions, and 21% of those have signalled they intend to travel to Canterbury, and we've had $1 million of booked travel already through our conversion partner, which was House of Travel. So what this shows you is the marketing work that we are doing is actually getting cut through, and we're very we take a great deal of care to make sure we do have a conversion partner, so we're converting the brand awareness to actual tactical people on the ground here in Christchurch. We also did a campaign with the Crusaders, which was the first of this type that the city had ever done with the Crusaders, which feels like a complete no-brainer because they are amazing and we are amazing, and they're based here. That was one of our most successful pieces of social activation. You can see 420,000 people engaged with that, including 2.6 million impressions on social media. So we're really pleased, and we're going to do some more work with them over the next few years. We might just skip over this one because there's heaps of detail. So finally, during the quarter, we were preparing to transfer the urban development functions to Christchurch NZ and to make sure these very important work programs continue. So we're really happy to report that transition has gone really smoothly. We're really pleased with how the teams are working. Haipuna Taimoana, we're continuing to work through the defect liability period in relation to the facility, and you all know the success of that facility, and we're really pleased with how that's going, and it's also attracted 3 awards in the reporting period. We're working, next week we will be with the community board on the Roy Stokes Hall following a community consultation and design-led process for uses of that site, and we're working with developers in relation to the Seaview, and we'll be reporting back through the community board on that over the next couple of weeks. In relation to 2 other parcels of land, Peterborough and Milton Street, we are continuing to work with a number of parties in relation of those 2 sites, and we'll be reporting back to this committee and to council in due course on those 2 sites. That's it. And that's us. Thank you. Happy to go back on any detail.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Joanna. And I have to say, I'm usually the harshest critic of some of the stuff you do, but I found that probably the best update we've had so far.
Thanks,
so
Sam.
really, really good work. Does anyone have any questions for? So Tim, and then Aaron. And then
just with regards to the Milton Street, it'd be really good just to stay in touch with the local community boards, and it actually crosses 2. It used to be us, but we the corner of Milton Street now, so Milton Colombo, that's where it stops, and we're on the south side, Melanie and I, so it'd be really good if that could just keep in touch because it does affect our community.
Yeah, that's a really good signal. Thank you. We'll make the time for both
Thank
of those community boards.
Cheers.
Aaron.
Yeah, so my one's just around the slide, the citywide innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, and just the last one, work underway on employment to self-employment program with MSD.
Yep.
So what is the thinking behind that, given the percentage, and I believe in the philosophy of failure way to success, but well, no, it's a true thing, and lots of entrepreneurs do it. That's how they get there, if you read any of their stories. But for people who are not entrepreneurs and have not run a business, to then, in a time of uncertainty and in some fields an economic slowdown and others an up-ramp, to be getting them to go into their own business when over half fail within 4
Yes,
years.
so the really interesting thing about some of the cohorts who are moving out of the workforce is there are two cohorts. There are highly skilled people such as pilots who have found that their industry has been impacted, and some of those people are seeing this as an opportunity for a life change. Now, and then there's another group of people who were working within the retail and tourism sector, which are lower wage sectors, and they need a different set of support. So we saw an opportunity alongside MSD and our partners at Te Haka and Think Lab to actually start to incubate some of those people who are looking for that life change and help them grow some of their business ideas through incubation.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how it lands, because with pilots, they're generally non-risk takers. That's why you put them at the front. And so, it'll be very interesting to see whether you can turn on a part of their brain that doesn't.
Yeah. So as
kick
part of
in.
those, we're conscious of that. As part of those contracts with the incubators, we've got a contracted success rate.
Right.
Yeah. So we require them to succeed a certain proportion of the cohorts going through.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see
Yeah,
updates
it
on
will
that.
be.
So if we can kind of get that highlighted on the way through
Yeah,
of
cool.
some success and not, whichever way.
Jake?
Just on the Explore Christchurch campaign, do you have an idea of how much this campaign or campaigns like it add to the local economy? You mentioned $1 million of booked travel, and I know it's probably hard to quantify, and I know it'll also be feeding that increased interest in living and visiting here. But yeah,
I don't have the numbers at the top of my head, but we do quantify a per visitor impact, which from the top of my head is around $320 per day per visitor. So once you start to see how many visitors are coming through, which we do measure once they land here, we can evaluate that. Yeah.
Great. James?
Kia ora. Thanks for the report. First question is, in one of your slides it says that you've got a mana whenua representative in the leadership group, I think it says.
Correct, yeah.
Is that as an employee, is that what you say?
No. So that's a Ngāi Tuahariri representative on the leadership group that supports the development of the recovery plan.
Right. I think it's important to just, and other people will see this, to note that with respect to our huriri is not the only mana whenua entity that you're looking after this area, you know?
Correct. So we're engaging with the other Papati Pūruranga through Te Honanga, and we're working with Liz Brown to engage with the other Papati Pūruranga early in the new year.
Yep, okay, thanks. And then I go to slide 16 of 17. The Seaview development, can you give us a little more information on that? Like how advanced is that, the substantial medium density residential development?
We're not in a position to give an update today because we're at a commercially sensitive stage, but we'd be happy to once we're able to do that in a public forum.
Okay, right, thanks.
Great. Jimmy and then Yanni and Leanne.
First one regarding to the Party Christchurch socio-economic recovery plan, particularly regarding the tourists and the events. I just want to know Christchurch NZ engage with the key stakeholders, whether it's covered outside of the CBD. For example, like Royal Air Force Museum, but that particular still consider visit London from nationwide or from overseas, etc., or how many events be the forecast estimates. I just want to know whether we engage with them.
We do use the Wigram as part of the For Middle series that we run. So when we bring trade agents to Christchurch, we will take them to that facility. And our events team also work with them when we're looking to bring events to Christchurch, as do obviously the V-Base team. So the Van Gogh exhibition, for example, has been placed at Wigram Air Museum because we are conscious of their pipeline.
Second is regarding urban development function transfer from the original DCL to the Christchurch NZ, particularly for those 4 pieces of land. Whether it's a little bit more detailed kind of update status regarding to this development.
Yeah, so the functions have now fully transferred and are operating within Christchurch NZ. As I said, the transfer has been really smooth from a technical point of view. Not any IT troubles, which has surprised even us. So, as I say, we're continuing the services uninterrupted, and those key work programs are up there.
Thank you. Great, Yanni, and then Leanne, and then we'll have to wrap it up because we've got people waiting.
Thank you. Just three questions. One is, can we get some sense, and I don't know how we do it, around what's happening to Milton Street? Because that's kind of different to what we were told the other day. So can we just have a conversation within CCHL and Christchurch NZ about that?
Maybe, Joanna, do you want us to take that offline with Dawn?
Yeah. It shouldn't be different.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The second thing is, I see you're doing a lot of work with the South Brighton, the Roy Stokes Hall, the former school site. How do we get you to do something similar in Phillipstown? Like, what's the process? Because, that's a community that's been asking for help and support, and I'm just trying to understand, how we give you direction to do that.
Yeah, so the functions that have transferred for this fiscal are restricted to a very narrow set of functions. I think the appropriate place for that conversation would be through the long-term plan process.
Well, yeah, okay.
Cool.
So,
And the third one?
Yeah, and the final one was just, in our statement, in our letter of expectation, we asked if you could look at best practice to improve equity in lower sectional areas of the city. Can you just explain what you've been doing in that space and what work you've been doing in the areas that are in the communities in terms of well-being for communities outside of the central city and in areas that do have those higher levels of social deprivation?
Yeah, so for this quarter, which is quarter one, we've been responding to that request by making sure that we've got the right, we're embarking on the right initiatives. So we've got two that we'll be talking about in quarter two, which is the Pupil Pathways program in Haiata, Linwood, and I think, I'll have to come back to you, Yanni, but I think also Hornby. And also a partnership with Ngāi Tuahariri in relation to Māori skills. So they're the two specific programs, and then obviously the MSD from unemployment into self-employment has an impact right across the community. It will be delivered through the 4 contact centres, MSD contact centres, which are in Linwood, Hornby, Papanui, and I apologise, there's a 4th area and I can't remember where it is, but
Just, have you looked at the Southern Initiative and thought about how that could be?
Yeah, we have. That's a heavily
yeah.
resourced initiative. So just to give you some comparisons, AT received 67 million in funding from the Auckland Council. Obviously, we only receive a very small portion in relation to that. So we don't have the resources to deliver a program such as the Southern Initiative, but we are really interested in that type of program.
Yanni, I'm just conscious of time. I think you've definitely made your point, but can we just go to Leanne and then we need to wrap it up because we've got people waiting.
Yeah, mine's very brief. It's just, and it's just to say congratulations. The diplomatic study tour, which is on at the moment, which has ambassadors and high commissioners from Wellington here at the moment. Just the feedback on the engagement with Christchurch NZ was outstanding, and I just wanted to acknowledge it publicly. And the second one was that I went to one of the Christchurch NZ events last year, and I can't remember what it was called, but where menus and beers and wines were all matched up around different restaurants. And people raised with me concerns about the fact that our own V-Base wasn't serving local, and it's because of the change of contract. It's completely different. It's a great story, and I know that you guys work really hard with them behind the scenes. The chief executive there has been outstanding, and it was just such a simple transition to now. I can't remember what the numbers are, but it's something like 80% local, 90% New Zealand. It's just such a big turnaround, and it means that when people come to events here, they get to showcase the very best of what our region has to offer. So thank you for the part that you play.
Oh, look, we appreciate that. We've got some of the best food and wine in the world. Why would we not showcase it?
Well, on that note, Leanne, do you want to move the receipt of the report?
Yes, I will. We're
Would
happy
someone
to.
Jimmy will second it. Any debate? No? All in favour? Against? Great, thank you for coming in. Andrew, do you want to come back and do the John stuff?
Just sent an email to
Thank you. So next we're going to move into item 10, and what I propose we do is deal with the Metro Sports Facility part of that report first, given that we've got John Bridgman, Chief Executive of Otakaro Limited, here with us. John, thanks for joining the meeting this morning. Welcome, good to have you with us. So yes, if you'd like to talk to us about Metro Sports, that would be excellent. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Let me just see how this works. Cool. So yes, I'd like to thank you first of all for the opportunity to come along and give you a bit of an update on progress on Metro Sport and how we're getting on with that project in partnership with yourselves. So it's 6 months since I was last here, and it's really starting to take shape and have some good work on site. And I thought it was worth kicking off, first of all, with just a reminder of what it looked like when I was here in the middle of the year. And the contrast to the site now is quite stark. This picture was just taken last week and is you can see quite a dramatic change and progress on site. In spite of the challenges that we're faced with COVID, the project is progressing well. So what I thought this morning was just take the opportunity to talk through some of the individual components and where the project is at. And you can see here there are a number of cranes on site. In particular the large crawler crane in the middle of the site and the fixed tower crane. There's a couple of smaller mobile cranes that are used around the site as well. So the foundations have progressed on all the buildings and a lot of the steel work has been erected. That's all being done by John Jones Steel locally. And the business has been going for about 50 years, and they say this is the largest ever contract they've had in their lifetime. So if we look in a bit closer, you can see that's looking out over the top of the pool building, and you can see the bleachers just up to the left-hand side of the pool in the middle of the shot, which will seat about 1,000 people poolside, and that work is progressing very well. This particular image was taken on Tuesday when the first of the roof trusses were installed. You can see the roof truss sitting in the middle of the picture over the top of the pool as it's being lifted into place. It's a 63-tonne lift requiring 2 cranes to manoeuvre it. And a slightly closer look as you can see the truss just being lowered into position. The other lift, that's the biggest lift that's been undertaken in Christchurch of any of the anchor projects. Previously there was a 58-tonne lift on the bus interchange and a 50-tonne lift on Tapai, but at 63 tonnes it's one of the biggest. And there are about 6 of those lifts that are progressing. Another one happened yesterday, and they're all weather dependent. If the weather holds out, we'll be able to proceed with the rest of them reasonably quickly. So if we have a bit of a look around the site, this shot is taken from the Antigua Street side of the site, and you can see looking out across the building the pools in the front of the picture. What we term the wet bar, and at the back is the dry bar. So you've got the leisure water facilities at the right-hand side of the picture, hydroslide and leisure pools, competition pool in the middle, which is 2 25-metre pools with a movable floor and separation wall that can turn it into a 50-metre pool, and at the far left-hand side, the dive pool. in the middle of between the wet bar and the dry bar is a fitness centre that also includes accommodation for over 100 high performance sport athletes. So you would have maybe seen some of the press overnight about challenges with the build, in particular around COVID. The classic example is us with the Italian pool builder. No one in New Zealand makes a pool of this grade, and so we've sourced that out of Italy. Most of the pool, or a lot of the pool, is here now, and we've been able to get immigration approval for the specialist resources to come in, and we're just managing our way through the MIQ facilities to get the guys in the country to be able to do the work. They will come and go 2 or 3 times over next year as the work progresses, and so each of those times we've got the instance of trying to get them in the country and through managed isolation. So that's put quite a complexity on this project and how it progresses. And we've got similar instances in other areas. So Merthyr never quite liked the fact we highlight the issue that they have on the project, or we have with them, but it illustrates so perfectly how the project is impacted by the variability of the COVID instance. This is a shot from the south end of the site, so you can see the dive well on your right hand side. Construction on there the floor will be is underway. The first layers of the floor is underway now and will be progressing in the weeks ahead. To the left you can see the community courts, and the floor, most of the floor has been built. This is built in a checkerboard arrangement for construction reasons and durability reasons. And you can see the south wall erected, and in the weeks ahead other parts of the community court building will be erected around that. Once the crane, which is located in the middle of the job, is able to move after the roof trusses that I talked about earlier have been installed. And in the north end you can see the building which has got the show courts, and that's also incorporates a running track and seating for a show event. Apologise for this. It's we were going to have a slide of the heat system, but I thought the presentation was this afternoon, not this morning. But anyway, we're here. The wastewater recovery system is quite an innovative part of the project. It's on this. This is a shot from again from the south looking north, right on the far left-hand corner past the show courts. We're installing the wastewater recovery plant, and so this is a innovative solution which will cut significant cost off the operations of the facility, captures the latent heat in the sewer that passes down this Armour Street outside, and sorry, not Armour Street, where am I? St Asaph Street, and captures that heat and is used to heat the pools and the facility, and the energy savings are in the hundreds of millions of dollars as a result of that installation. So that's the update I've got for you on MSF. Happy to answer questions on that or other issues.
Thank you, John, for taking the time to join us at relatively short notice this morning. So timelines, you indicated, obviously there have been some concerns around the import of the pool, but it sounds as though that's all going well. Where are we at in terms of timelines and delivery on this project?
At the moment, we're expecting completion at the end of 2022.
End of 2022. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Yanni.
Thanks. I was just interested in what the land conditions are like. Has there been any issues with the quality of the land in terms of the
It's always been a challenging site, which is why we spent so much money trying to improve it. There's been a lot of work done on stone columns to provide an adequate foundation, and there's ongoing work on ground improvements as the project is being developed. It's a very challenging site.
So when it's all finished, will we have an opportunity to understand, I guess, the lessons learnt about things like site selection in regards to like things like ground conditions and what that's done in terms of cost?
Yeah, yes, we can have a conversation about that for sure. It was built in, the site, the costs associated with the site have been built into the project since the beginning, and it is what we anticipated it to be.
Right.
And we've designed the facility to cope with the conditions on that site.
I guess it would be good for, like, you know, one of the reasons QE2 we couldn't build back there was we were told because of land conditions, so it would be good just to understand that, I think. Thank you.
Aaron and then Pauline. Aaron.
Just a quick question and then a comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. Firstly, the question is, the old water supply that was used by the breweries, the old ward breweries and stuff, is that being used for the water supply for the pools and drinking and everything else? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, it's a shame, but that's why the brewery was put there. But
yeah,
it'll be good to know, because it's come up a couple of times by members of the public. They're just interested because they think it's a waste of holy water. And the question, the comment was, we had an update at the Disability Committee recently, and the feedback was overwhelmingly positive from the disability sector on the sensory experience and the entire design of the place. So I hadn't seen you since then, so I just wanted to pass that on.
Oh,
overwhelmingly positive.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Pauline.
Aaron. I'm just interested in the heat recovery from the wastewater system. So I know that you said the savings are in the large hundreds of millions, but what about the...
Hundreds of thousands. Sorry.
Oh, hundreds of
Did
thousands.
I say hundreds of millions?
You did.
No, hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of millions, we would all be running heat recovery.
So the set-up cost for that, is that a large cost to set that up, that system?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but it's economic in this instance.
In the economic in the long run. I was just interested because we did look at that for the Linwood pool as well, and we discounted that for, I can't remember why. Yeah, or something to do with the distance to the main sewer, I think.
All right, so
this sewer has the
and
advantage of having high volume outside, very consistent temperature. It's right on the street outside the facility.
Yeah.
And there's a high demand for heat in the building. It's a big building and a lot of water to heat.
So it could be scale.
So the scale issue is quite
All right.
important.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on Metro Sports? Great. All right, John, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us this morning. It's appreciated. Thanks very much indeed.
Cheers.
Thank you. Okay, so Alistair, have you got any comments on the remainder of the report?
No, I'll just say that there were two main, on the capital facilities elected member update, there was just, if I just say Performing Arts Precinct is up today, there's a paper up today. The old municipal chambers, we've got a paper up on the 10th of December. There was point 2 in the recommendations regarding the chronological responses to the Performing Arts Precinct. So I've applied that to this paper at this time for record. If there's nothing else, then no, fine. I can go straight to the CMUA report, if you will, on behalf of the board.
All right, so is there anything on this Capital Major Facilities elected member update? Any further questions? Jimmy?
Only one question, because on page 69, the new hobby center, how the community, the hobby, they try to, to apply for the funding from Rata Foundation. However, Rata reviewed all the concept design mentioned, because original title therapy is not a part of the resource concern application. They are not allowed to apply for the funding. So the topic, I'm not sure our project manager, they are aware of this issue.
Yeah, look, I'd have to, sorry Jimmy, I'd have to go away and get some further information on that. But I'm
Yes.
pretty sure we've, from a design perspective and certainly in the concepts, we've always included for that capability in the future. We won't be applying for it because we haven't got the funding to actually do it. So it could be just the complexity of the applying for the consenting process. So can I come back to you and just give you some bullet points
I
on
would
that?
like to, they
Yep.
feel, the kind of block, frustrated by this one.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So let's take that conversation. Jimmy, let's take that conversation offline. Perfect. Are there any further questions for Alistair on this report? Yanni.
Just in regards to the court theatre memo that we've got, the development agreement with the court theatre, is that resolution been passed by the further resolutions? Or I'm just trying to understand when we actually get the development agreement that looks at the, as you said in here, the
Are you looking
costs.
at the actual paper now? Because I haven't got the paper in front
No,
of me.
this is just on attachment 10, page 75, where you've got the resolutions. The negotiation of a development agreement with Court Theatre includes detailing the process for completing design, construction of the premises, cost estimates, financial commitment from each party, and possible lease terms. Has that come to us, or
Yeah, that's
if
what you'll
not?
be seeing today. Some of that you'll see today as well as part of the concept. But the actual development agreement's been approved.
It has.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And again, in the papers that you've received today for the Performing Arts Precinct, it details all of that agreement in the resolutions.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you. So in the absence of any further questions, I'm happy to move this item. Pauline will second. Any debate? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. And then, Alistair, while we've got you here at the table, let's now move to item 11, the multi-use arena elected member update.
So this will be a regular paper that we'll put up for and on behalf of the board. So I'm just representing the board today at Maureen's request. It's just the recommendations to receive the information on the CMUA. We proceed at pace. As you know, we're RFPs in the market. We are actively engaging with the market, and the response has been fantastic. We've got, and due to that, we had a request from the market to extend the RFP delivery date, which is now the 29th of January. And we've also, through the interactive sessions we've had with the market, they've requested further interactive sessions, and we've agreed to that as well because of the intent that's there between the parties. And we're going to do that before the end of the year. So we've got 3 sessions booked for December, so late December. So
Excellent.
it's really good response, to be quite honest, and really good news. So.
Yeah, now that level of response obviously indicates good news, and the fact that you're dealing with this before the end of the year, we're clearly moving at pace as well.
We're trying to, yes. Yeah.
That's excellent. All right, now how frequently will this report be coming to us?
Again, it'll be alongside of the elected member updates, which are quarterly at the moment. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Now that's fine. And if when we get further into the project we're seeing a need for more frequent reporting, we can obviously change that up at the time.
And the board will be reporting to you as well separately anyway. So.
Indeed.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's great. Any questions on this one? I'll just take questions first. Aaron.
Just 2 really quick ones. One is under the brief summary where it's got 25,000 seating capacity with the 5,000 temporary seats. I thought in all the language for that we were always going to put in the standing capacity as well, just for part of the narrative.
25.5 is the with the ability to stand in the 5 location is still written into the brief documents that we put out to the market.
I thought a standing room only concert takes it to 35.
Yeah, sorry. So in a concert mode, you're 36,000.
36.
Actually.
Yeah, just if we always have that in the narrative would always be good. So when the public have got their lens on it, they're always going, oh, it's rather than just, oh, it's only 25.
Yeah, understood.
That one, and the other one was from a conversation going back a few years, is on our major sites like this, just the on-site signage and the updating of them, just even if they're changed once every 6 months or a year, just this is what we're doing, this is how much we're spending, this is what you're getting, just for that public buy-in.
And where we are.
So
where we are.
Yeah, so what we're doing at the moment, as you know from the Performing Arts Precinct, we're putting in a link to our site, our Newsline access, so people can go straight to our Newsline site. So rather than trying to, at a cost to the project, keep updating boards on site, we refer to the Newsline articles and the Newsline page, and people can go straight to that rather than, because that is updated regularly with new information. And particularly the CMUA websites is updated weekly at the moment.
Yeah, my only concern is the those elderly people and stuff that might not have access to good internet or whatever, or web, but adverse to it, that, you know, have a wee wander through town and stop and actually read these things? Or
Yeah,
look,
we can do
that's
the
all.
initial, but yeah.
Or even if it's once a year a changeover, it's only
Yeah,
a piece
okay,
of quill flow.
we'll look at that,
Yeah.
we'll work with the media team.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, it'll attract people to look.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? All right, so Sam, you're happy to move this one. Do I have a seconder? Aaron will second. Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much indeed for the information. Now let's break for morning tea. So we're at 7 minutes past 11. Let's come back at 11:25, which will see us running slightly late according to our schedule. So if we can start on time at 11:25, and that'll be with Sam in the chair for the Christchurch City Holdings annual report, item 18. So 25 past, so I'll adjourn until then.
Just
Thank
had
you.
a message that Councillor Major's flux capacitator is running flat.
I thought his name was Marty.
Okay, I'll give the Russians a call.
Okay, welcome along, Jeremy and Paul and Leah. We might get underway just noting, obviously, the CCHL directors like they have done in the past. So do you want to just talk us through it and then we go from there if there are any questions?
Sure, thanks, Sam. But firstly, before they start, I just would like to do a point of clarification here. In the report, we've stated that CCHL received $95 million worth of dividend. This correlates with the table that's in their report, but it relates to two financial years. So the actual dividend received was 59 in the year. So that's from all their subsidiaries. So just point of clarification, just to get that underway. And remember that council budgeted $48 million this year, but due to the circumstances that went down, we only received the 22, and we did borrow for the rest as we agreed. So that was just clarifying that first opening statement there, just to make sure that everybody's happy with that. Because if you go back to the table, you can add things up on that table, but they don't physically will come through to the boom, so multiple financial years. So I'll introduce Jeremy and Paul, and I'll step away and Leah can come forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam.
Great.
Good. Well, with that clarification, thanks for the opportunity to present our annual report. So the full annual report, which has been sent out, sets out our progress against our 5 strategic pillars. I'd really encourage you to take the chance to have a look through that. It's got some much deeper thoughts in it than I can give you in the short period of time here, but I'll give you a snapshot of some of those pillars and how they're playing out within our group companies. Katiakatanga, City Care is committing over 39,000 volunteer hours in the community. Mana, Enable, providing free Wi-Fi in Cathedral Square. Sustainability, this is the port's, a good example of that is the port's Healthy Harbour Leadership, where they're facilitating research to learn more about ocean plastics. People, which of course is a core plank of all of our businesses. And there I particularly like to highlight and like you to have a look at the Tīwhariki platform that has been facilitated through CCHL. And that's really to harness the wider capability of the group and much more increased collaboration, which can be very powerful for us. So if you take the chance to have a look through that, it'd be much appreciated. But for today, we'll focus on the financial. It is the F&B committee. You should have a summarised report in front of you that Leah has prepared. The year-end financial result is made up of many moving parts, but there's a couple of key dominating factors in this particular one, and that's COVID and the revaluation of the LPC net assets. As you'll see from Leah's report, the group has responded really well to the challenge of COVID so far. That's not to say that there aren't more challenges to come as this plays out. I'll turn now to the revaluation of the LPC assets, and just a brief comment on that because it is key to the result. So in June, the end of June this year, LPC changed their accounting policy for the valuation of their property, plant and equipment, and they did that to align with group policy, and we value these things at fair value. That valuation method, it really more accurately reflects the earning power of the assets, as opposed to this historical cost less depreciation and impairment. So it's a change in accounting policy. It did impact the profit. The net impact was a fair value adjustment of $157.8 million at group level. That's after tax. But I think it's worth pointing out that revaluation doesn't have a direct cash impact on the group. It doesn't impact LPC's position as a strong long-term infrastructure business. Giving you some highlights on the financial results for the year. At a group level, we had just over $1 billion of operating revenue, and that was up 4% year on year. Net profit after tax was a loss of $53 million compared to $132 million positive last year. But of course, without that LPC revaluation, that would have come in at circa $105 million positive. The group assets now sitting at about $4.5 billion. That's up just under $300 million, and that was driven by investments made by the airport, by Orion, and an uplift in valuation and Enable of $66 million. Group borrowings increased on the other side of the ledger, increased by about 222 million and are now sitting at just over 2 billion. At the parent level, so that's the holding company level, our operating revenue of 60 million, which we largely driven from what we receive from the subsidiaries, was about 28 million less than last year. Payments to lenders climbed to 39 million, so that went up from 33 million to 39 million with the increased debt load that we have on board. We paid dividends to council in that year of 22 million. That compared to 48 million in ordinary dividends last year, but of course we also made those special dividend payments or capital release of 140 million. Overall, our borrowings have increased by about 70 million at the parent company level, and that's a net increase of on-lending to our subsidiaries of about 82 million. We also repaid some core debt of around about $11 million. So overall, the valuation of our investments has increased by about 100 million and now sits at 2.9 billion. Just in closing, and I did mention this at the AGM for those of you who had the opportunity to attend, that we believe that our strategy, and it encompasses some of these following things, but our strategy of taking a long-term outlook, our diversification of investments, financial prudence, supporting our subsidiary boards and giving them the space that they really need to make the right decisions at the right time, and more recently, this substantially enhancing the collaboration across the group to enhance that full potential of the group. We believe that all these factors have combined to enable us to report to you that as at the end of the financial year just passed, and despite the second unprecedented crisis in a decade, that the group is actually in a sound financial position. There are no doubt many challenges ahead, and there's a lot to do, but I believe we've got a really strong foundation in place, and I also believe we have every reason to be able to look to the future with some confidence. So with those opening remarks, we are more than happy to take questions.
Cool, thank you very much, Jeremy. Does anyone have any questions? Aaron. Yep.
Can't believe I'm the only one. Just around some of the feel-good stuff you said, Jeremy, at the start was great, you know, like the hours by City Care of volunteerism and so on and so forth. What about getting the bottom end of their staff and any others under your umbrella to the living wage? Where are we at with that, and what would be the final date that the last person would be on that across the entire organisation?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. So the living wage, as you know, we've been on a journey for the last couple of years and working with the groups, and to be fair, have actually made some really good progress in that. When you've got, and there is really only two entities that within the group that have people below the living wage, and the progress has been very good, but unfortunately with COVID, we were on track to make it this year to get everyone above them, but with COVID it has had an impact on that. And that's because we've got, you know, zero increases in salaries in a union based. So they are working. It is still going to get back on track, but whether we actually get it in line with what we want to by the end of this financial year, that won't happen.
Right, so I understand salaries over a certain amount having zero increases, but right at that bottom end, and given and one of the companies being City Care, of course, they turned some quite good numbers this year, and I know everyone at the table has a different view, but my personal view would have been I would have rather seen them get the staff up to living wage than had bought a fleet of electric vehicles, for instance. Done it the other way around, looked after the people first, then, and I know that there's those other targets as well, and they all exist, and it's a balancing act, but it's...
And the balancing act is also too about ensuring that all staff keep their jobs, which has been the biggest challenge for all entities, and especially in those contracting entities. Plus two, if you think about from City Care did do well, and they've been on a journey themselves, and even in the challenges in the last couple of years, they have progressed that bottom end up in line, and the way they've done that is they're moving everybody up, but moving that smaller group even higher, because it's not just those right under the living wage. It's there's a whole range that they're moving them up, and it's very hard when you're saying there's no increases to everybody to actually move just one entity, one part of it, when you're in a union as well, negotiation. So they're working really hard. It's definitely on the radar. Don't think for 1 minute that it's not a priority. It is. The priority is keeping people in jobs this year and focusing on going forward and getting back on track with that.
Yeah. So do we have an end date? Sorry,
Not at this stage, but I will keep you posted as I do in the reporting.
Yeah, it would be quite good to,
Yeah,
even if that
absolutely.
date moves, as long as we kind of have it.
Well and
If
truly,
things going well, it's 1 year. Things go terrible, it's 3.
Correct.
Or if things go better than well, it's 6 months. Whatever. Those numbers would be nice to have a lens on.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we're committed to keep reporting back on that.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? No, Leo, I just had one, and I was just, when I was reading through the notes, the accounts, just a clarification for me. It's under personnel costs, so there's the salaries and wages for 275 mil, defined contributions, and then there's other of 3.5 million. What's the other?
What note is it, Sam?
What note is it?
Have you got the note reference in front of you?
Yeah, it's 8A. It's on page 95.
I knew there was a reason we bought it.
Yeah. 95, did you say, Sam?
Oh, yeah, 95 of our one, which is
Oh,
71 of yours.
71? Okay.
Come on, so it's getting bad.
Yeah, turn the lights on.
Yeah.
Leah can't see, she's getting old.
My old is getting...
She needs glasses.
Can't see. No, just tell me what page it is. Go on, oh, so it's 71, did you say?
Yeah, page 71.
There we go, this has got to be it.
Use a bigger font next year, Leah.
Yeah, I think I might.
It's probably lots of white
No,
space
it's not
as
actually
well.
on that.
Yeah.
What would it be?
Keep talking amongst yourselves and I'll come back to you as soon as I found it. It's actually a personnel thing. I think it's us. I should know this.
Warering's not 3 million.
No, I think that's...
Which is 95.
Were there any other questions while we track that one down? No? Okay.
Sorry, bear with me. Sam, have you got it up in front of you?
Yep. So it's 95 in the annual.
There will be other costs related for the group in regards to everything that's been related to personnel costs. I don't know off the top of my head, I can come back to it, but anything that's been defined under the standards personnel costs. So salary wages, super, what other things could be other key things that are part of REM, LTIs possibly, and so forth.
Yeah, it'd be good to know.
Yeah, I'll find that out. No problem.
Any other?
Sorry, Sam, what was your question? 'Cause we're
Oh, so my question was, in personnel costs, there's salaries and wages, superannuation, and then an other of 3.5 million, which I was just trying to understand what that related to. So I think Leah might be able to come back to us. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Any other questions? No. There's a recommendation up there to note the annual report for that. Would someone like to move it? Jimmy? And Aaron will second it. Any discussion? All in favour? Against? That's carried. And do you want to do 19 while you're there, Leah?
Yes, please.
Yep. Excellent.
So obviously that was talking about the last financial year, and you've got in front of you the dashboard. I will be back this afternoon from a strategic point of view, but in the dashboard on the quarterly reporting for the first quarter of this financial year. And as you can see on the dashboards, things are actually looking not too bad. This just reminding, these dashboards are actually saying that we are tracking against our statement of intent targets for the year at an individual basis, and any red or orange usually indicate if we're concerned, hence why there's a comment in there in City Care with the living wage, Aaron. I'll just put it if there's any questions, really.
There aren't any? So Aaron, you happy to move? Tim, you happy to second it? Any discussion? No? All in favour? Against? It's carried. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So now let's move immediately to item 14, the Performing Arts Precinct and Court Theatre Concept Design Report. So we've got a number of people in attendance, the architects and court theatre representatives, and Matt, you're the staff member presenting this one. So if you'd like to come to the table, invite anyone else to the table that you wish, or bring people forward as you need. Are there any opening remarks on this report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm Matt Cummins, I'm the author of the report, and this is Barbara George, John Rennie and Michael Down in my team. This report represents some really significant progress on the delivery of this key project for the blueprint and for the development of this block within the city. The Performing Arts Precinct is a big project in itself, and it has lots of smaller parts, including the court theatre and other things which you would have read in the report as well. The previous resolution took the project through to the end of concept design, which you'll see, I think, 1.3, sorry, in the front of the report. The recommendation today is to move the project forward into design next year, procurement, consenting, and then we plan to come back to formally to council with a report recommending that we move forward into a construction contract. That's pretty much the summary. I would just pick up on Councillor Johansson's question from earlier this morning about the development agreement. It is referenced in the report in 5.1.5, and the development agreement is a signed document which is in line with the previous resolution. So we've got staff here today and the team happy to take questions.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions on this report? So Aaron, you're happy to move. Mike, you've got a question? Just for noting? Yep, that's fine. Mike, you had a question?
Just a question in 5.1.4 around the 128 Armour Street, the old Ken's camera site. And it says in there, the understanding is that the land is transferred from Linz to council.
Yep.
The understanding, but is that confirmed they are going to, or is it just, like you're saying the understanding, so you're not actually confirming they will be?
Councillor, when I wrote this 3 weeks ago, that was the position. Conversation this morning with our property team is that the documents are in the process of going through, and the documents are dated on my hand 26th of November. So
Okay.
they're backdated to that. So essentially, council owns it now.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? So Aaron, you're moving this. Do I have a seconder? James? Yep, so moved Aaron, seconded James. Is there any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Great, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Next one.
All right, so now let's pick up the regular reports on the agenda. So moving back to item 8, the Capital Project Performance Report. And Ruth, thank you for waiting. Welcome to the table. Yeah, any introductory remarks that you've got on this report, please?
Great, thank you very much. Good morning, still morning. So the Capital Project Performance Report in front of you, captured as of the 20th of October. So I'll take the report and its full content as read. I will provide a couple of opening remarks. So current financial year performance on page 39. So against a budget of 514, project managers are forecasting at 520. So if we look at the core program only, which excludes the Metro Sport and CMUA, which sit above the line, project managers are currently forecasting 450. So still in a position of a bring back of 45 million. So spend to date at 20th of October was 95 mil. So that is comparable to spend to date that we've had in previous financial years around the same time. Noting, of course, last financial year we delivered 388 despite COVID lockdown and restrictions. So we are at present would expect to improve on that result this financial year. So I'll talk a little bit about that bring back. You will see that that has reduced month by month with the current forecast now much closer to budget than it has been. And that is a common trend as we progress through the financial year. But I don't think it's a major cause for concern that that trend will continue on that downwards rate. So to elaborate on that, I just want to talk a little bit about our current state as well as performance against our historical trends. So we have 300 projects in construction at the moment. We've got 344 million forecast against them, and that compares to last year where we had 243 projects forecasting 243 million. That's not a mistake, it is the same number. 243 projects and 243. So we are still forecasting a bring back of 45 mil, which is well ahead of the last 3 financial years, where at this point in year we were actually forecasting an average of 37 below budget, so a carry forward. So that means, we'll suggest that we're in a far better position this financial year to tolerate a level of uncertainty and delay. You'll recall last month I talked a little around accuracy of forecasting. We're still reasonably accurate with our forecasting. We've projected that model for the last 12 rolling months. This month, with accuracy of forecast gone to a more granular level at delivery unit. So that's ranging at present between 80% accuracy and 94% accuracy. So if we modelled that out to the financial year, we'd end up with a result of around about 395 against the 405. On pages 47 to 49, you'll see the project exceptions that are contributing to those carry forward and bring back numbers. So those are the projects that are holding the biggest deviation from the original financial year budget that was approved. And COVID claims are the final update that I want to provide. So at the time of writing, COVID claims were static from previously reported in September. But since the writing of this report, we've resolved another 6, and we only have 5 to resolve out of the 46. So we will provide you a final view with all of the details around costs relating to those COVID claims once they're fully resolved. Now happy to take any questions.
Excellent, thank you. So just looking at this bring back of 45 million, obviously we'll keep a close eye on that as we get these reports throughout the financial year. Are you expecting that figure to erode as the year goes on? Are you expecting the final bring back figure to be less than that?
Yeah, I'd say so, because what we try to do with delivery units is try and accelerate the early planning phases and projects to tolerate a level of delay for projects that are in construction. So as we do, which you cannot predict, experience some unforeseen delays, that forecast will go down on those projects in construction. But we try and kind of balance that out by accelerating those early planning and other projects.
Yep. And noting that we remain focused on delivering the 405 core programme. So this is a good news story, but obviously we'll be keeping an eye on that figure in future reports.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this report? Jimmy.
Page 57, the project of Horsewell Junction Road extension regarding to the approved budget, sorry, and the current forecast. I'm not sure. I remember a couple of months ago, staff told me that we signed already signed the funding agreement between council and the Kiwi Rail. Am I right? Now you're funding 9.1. Now forecast 12.4. So this additional $2.5 million is from Kiwi Rail pay, or is from council to contribute to this one? I'm confused.
Very low chair, sorry.
Yeah.
You got the chair this time.
Okay, yeah. $2.5 million.
It's council costs for Kiwi Rail infrastructure upgrades.
Yeah, so council contribute.
Council pay.
But we signed agreement is how much? 9.5 or 12.4?
No, we signed an agreement to cover the costs of the project.
12.4.
We signed an agreement to cover the costs as they come in.
Yes.
And the costs have gone up, yes, to 12.4.
Oh.
That's the estimated cost. We are working very hard to try and get the costs down.
Okay.
But we are responsible for quite a significant upgrade to the Kiwi Rail network because of the position that we want to put the road across the rail network.
Okay. Last time your information mentioned the detailed design from Kiwi Rail still going on. So up to now, what's update status?
It's still ongoing.
But when will it be finished?
I can't tell you that level of detail at this meeting, I'm afraid. That was updated in the meeting. Kiwi Rail are responsible for progressing that, and we are meeting with them monthly to follow that progress.
Okay. And also regarding to the current forecast delivery date, last time you mentioned is in June 2022, but now it's 1 month earlier in May 2022, whether there's a key review commitment or not. 1 month before, earlier.
These updates that you receive in these reports monthly
Yes.
are informed by our monthly meetings with KiwiRail as to how we're going against progress. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mike?
Thank you. I'd just like to follow on the same topic in terms of KiwiRail, and I guess because that's not the only project that I guess is not moving forward because of KiwiRail. When we look at some of the level crossings we have up in Papanui with both Herwood Road and Langdons Road, which actually is getting, I think, to be quite a high risk situation with the amount of people now using that shared path. And I just want to know what we can do to actually progress this, because it's not acceptable for the community to actually have to actually navigate that road.
So, one correction, if I may. They are progressing and they are moving forward. Hallsville Junction Road is moving forward. We have completed all of our work required, and they are moving forward and are purchasing product, and they are completing designs. We are doing the same on all of our other projects. We met with management from KiwiRail just late last week. Sorry, the weeks are merging together a little bit at the moment. Late last week, and all of the projects are moving forward. And to be fair to KiwiRail, the 5 extra crossings came on about 3 to 4 months ago when we got the approval for the shovel-ready money. So they came on the program then. So we are progressing it, and we're agreeing a program with KiwiRail, and we're trying to get it running.
Okay. The Herwood Road's been there for a while.
Yep.
So when can we actually start seeing a shovel in the ground at the Herwood Road level crossing?
You're at least 12 months away from that.
And there's no way we can speed that up?
No, that's what I've been told.
Pauline?
Thank you. My question's on page 54, and it's the Three Waters contract management. So, I don't know, insufficient funding to complete the full project scope, the risk of IT and business not being available, e.g. SAP specialists. Can you explain a little bit more about what that actually means, please?
I'm not sure if I've got anyone from IT in here. My interpretation of that is all IT projects rely on subject matter experts within the business to be able to deliver on scope items. And as you are aware, many people are stuck in business as usual, as they are also have demands on projects as well. And so we can't often always predict the demands that business as usual and projects might have. And so therefore projects are quite often delayed due to availability of resource. So I suspect that the wording there is in relation to resource availability.
Yes, sounds like it. Could we perhaps get a memo enlarging on that, because we have identified that this is a very important area to us, and if it's a resourcing issue we need to address that in the LTP potentially.
Ruth, can I suggest that it's a conversation between Leonie and Dave about reprogramming?
Yeah.
Thank you. Melanie?
This is for Lynette as well, sorry. It's just, and it's the line under the Hallsville Junction one, but it's about the road lighting LED project. So, yeah, can you just speak to that?
On the other chair. Sorry, can't do that. Sorry. Where am I? What page are you
Can
on?
you remind us the page?
Oh,
number?
sorry, it's 57.
Oh, yeah, just a bit there.
Second to bottom row.
LED. Oh, yes. So the LED, the LED replacement upgrade is, I hope you're aware, has a 85% FAR, so we pay 15% of costs in NZTA, reimburse 85% equivalent costs. There was equivalent of 3-month delay in that contract as a result of the COVID situation, which means the contract is entitled to an extension of time. NZTA have advised that they will only pay eligible subsidy for materials that are purchased and installed up until the end of June, so they haven't extended the period of subsidy. And I think that's a reality in their world with, my understanding is there's this reality in their world around the NLTP cycles. They can't roll over subsidy agreements into the next NLTP cycle. So they won't do that. But we're working with our contractor to try and install as much, or all if possible, by the end of this financial year. So they are up resourcing to achieve that. And that's subsidised as well.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So they're on board with it.
Yep. The
Okay.
contractor,
Mm.
yes, absolutely, on board with achieving the outcomes and getting it delivered by the end of the financial year.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
All right, thank you. No more questions? Mike?
Just one question, but I don't know if there's staff to answer it. It's around the wellhead conversion, where you've got on the first page of attachment A, and it talks about Trafalgar Street, but then says that 2 wellheads at Farrington Pump Station have been gone above ground. So I'm just curious, is it Trafalgar Street that's happened? But I don't.
We may not have
Might have
staff
to come back to you on
answer
that
the
one.
question. If we can get back to you offline, that would be good. Thank you. No further questions? I'm happy to move this. Can I have a seconder? Aaron? Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thanks very much indeed, Ruth, for the work and for the presentation of the report. Thank you. So now we move to item 9, the LTP 2021 update. And Peter Ryan, again, thanks very much indeed for the report, which we'll take as read. But if there are any particular matters you want to draw our attention to, now's the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Just briefly, I would like to flag that these reports always they have a lead time now of about 3 weeks. And with a fast-moving project like the LTP, there are things that have moved in the last 3 weeks. So I will simultaneously be talking to this report and what things are like today. Very quickly, since this was written, the capital program is largely, if not completely, landed. Most of the OPEX savings are complete, and the budgets are now in activity plans, and that wasn't the case back in the 10th or so of November. I'd also like to just explain, because I've had a query about the traffic lights. Amber doesn't mean this will fail, it means this needs focus. It doesn't mean that it's a failure, that's what red is. So an amber light here means this will be okay if we focus on it. And that's subsequently been the case. Overall, if this report were written today, I would flag it as green because we are on track to meet our February adoption date. But at the time it was written, it's a fair reflection of the things that were not resolved at that point. So I just want to point out that temporal issue. Otherwise, Mr. Chair, you've indicated the report's taken as read.
Indeed. Yep. Thank you very much indeed. So any questions on this report? Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Peter, for this, and it's good to talk about the different colours and how that will be reflected going forward. So just in terms of the timeline, and you mentioned it's on track, is there, so we're still on track effectively to go out to consultation 25th or 24th, I think, of February?
Sorry, to clarify, the meetings to adopt are the 23rd and the 25th. There then is normally about a week to 10 days to finalise the CD to reflect those decisions, because there are always some last minute changes.
Okay.
And we would go out to consultation around about the 7th of March.
Right.
7th to 10th of March, depending on how quickly the document can be laid up.
Okay, so there aren't any issues with that?
There are issues that only came to light, as some of you know, yesterday. Audit New Zealand has flagged that they have resourcing issues and that they're potentially looking at 4 to 6 weeks delay to process our LTP. We cannot adopt an LTP without their opinion from a legal standpoint. Now that's come as something of a surprise, I think it's fair to say. And there are discussions today. In fact, I'm meeting audit at 2:30 today to further those discussions about what could be done about how that might be handled.
Dawn, you've got some additional comment on this?
Thank you, Chair. In those discussions, I'm expecting Peter to be really clear with Audit New Zealand. We are hitting our timescales and we need them to do the same. And so I appreciate that they had to get all of the annual reports done across the local government landscape. However, I'm looking for them to be innovative in terms of the approach they can take in this period to parallel run the work to get it done.
Thank you. Sarah.
As a follow-up to that, while we had specific legislation for our annual plan with timeframes and things, do you think that this might lead to something similar, given that the problem doesn't lie at our end, and that it's likely to be impacting councils across the country with that additional delay?
There's no indication of a legislative change like there was for COVID.
Is that something we could maybe mention to the correct, MP, Minister?
It could be.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, certainly if this is a problem been faced by a number of councils or all councils, depending on the impact and depending on the conversations we're going to have with Audit NZ, that may be an approach that could be seen as necessary.
But from a selfish point of view, we do spend a lot of money with Audit New Zealand, so we should be seen as a priority. So I just wonder if we can add in a resolution.
Okay, so Sam, what were you proposing to add?
I flicked it through to Samantha. It's just that so request the Chief Executive meet with the appointed auditor. So urgently to request that Audit New Zealand identify an alternative approach to the delay of the audit. So I mean, it's good you guys are already chatting, but I think there probably needs to be a signal from us that it's not really good enough, and we're spending well over a couple $100,000 with them.
That would be very helpful.
All right, so Dawn, you're in agreement with this idea?
I am absolutely in agreement,
it gives
yes.
you what you need to do the work. That's great. All right, so Sam, we'll note then that you'll move this with that addition.
Cool.
That's fine. And Tim, you're happy to second? Yep, great. All right, are there any further questions? All right, so this has been moved by Sam, seconded by Tim. Is there any debate? All right, so Peter, thanks very much indeed for the update. And I think, your opening remarks show that this continues to be a piece of work. The development of the LTP is a piece of work that continues to move at pace and is quite dynamic. The co-production approach certainly seems to have worked very, very well. We've done a lot of work in the time since the report was put together. We've obviously still got quite a bit of work ahead of us between now and the end of this calendar year. I certainly agree with the concerns that have been raised around the potential delays due to Audit New Zealand and their capacity, and certainly welcome this additional resolution being added so that we can deal with that as best we're able to, realising that we have expectations, but some of those matters obviously are out of our hands. But there's a risk there that we need to take steps to remove or mitigate as best we possibly can, and certainly the Chief Executive and staff meeting with Audit New Zealand directly will be the best way to do that. So we look forward to hearing the results of that engagement. Tim.
Just a quick thank you to Sam for bringing that up. I think we do need to show strong support for our CE and a flavour from the councillors. So thanks.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now continuing to move through the reports in the order they are on the agenda. Item 12, the Riccarton Road Upgrade Closeout Report. So Lindsay and Ross, welcome to the table, and Lynette, welcome back. Any opening remarks? Oh, you've got a presentation on this one, in fact. So let's do that.
Yeah, the purpose of the presentation is just to show some quick before and after photos just to support the report. As detailed in the report, the project was delivered in 3 stages, and we just wanted to highlight those stages, kind of take you back a little bit as to what the Dean's Ave intersection looked like originally, which was one of our safety issue intersections. It was rated number 26 on that list, and what it looks like now is a signalised intersection. This was obviously Ross's water and wastewater works that happened route-wide, to give some kind of perspective. I know a lot of you have seen these before. And then stage 2 up to Harakiki Street, when we were doing the resurfacing, you can see the deteriorated roadway there and carriageway and what it looked like after we'd resurfaced it. So this is Central Rickertons. This is the last stage that we've just recently completed with the median island, and this is just outside the bus lounge in that section. You can really see how we've straightened up the camber there for the buses. The buses were really leaning into the lounge, so we had to do quite a lot of work to get the road to the right level in that section. This is just slightly further down back towards kind of Clarence Street and Straven Road, where we've taken the opportunity to improve the landscaping in the area. And then just to show very quick video of some of our resurfacing just at the very end. It's really nice when it's on a time lapse and it's that quick. But you can see obviously it's quite a major project. The only point in the report really to kind of highlight is obviously the community feedback that we included. The community really kind of had a great buy-in for the project, and we definitely got some real positive feedback at the end of the project, and they're really happy with the result. So they put up with a lot. It was a lot of work over multiple years, but yeah, a great result.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions on this report? Jimmy, you're happy to? Yeah, that's fine. So I'll note that you're going to move this, Jimmy, but we'll deal with questions first. So Sam and then Mike. Sam.
Really good report. Just when I was reading it, I couldn't see in there where it talked about the NZTA contribution.
Oh yeah, it was actually, it had NZTA subsidy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't put that in actually. It has, all stages have all been awarded the NZTA subsidy.
I guess maybe in the future it would be good to just see when we get a closeout report, the contribution that isn't internal.
We would normally, this one got even more complex because of the 3 stages, and there was Crown funding through the cost share agreement, and it got quite complex. So we just trying to put it through, but yes, we will try and make sure we do that in every future report.
Thank you, Mike.
Obviously this was quite a long project, but obviously at the beginning you identified the coal tar. How did that go with the timing of the North Avon Road coal tar issue? What was done first? I'm just trying to work out, because obviously there was lessons learned from North Avon with the coal tar.
We applied it to this. Yes, and we applied those lessons to this, made sure we were ahead of the game. But you still had coal tar issues.
Yeah, we did have coal tar issues, especially in the later section, so Harakiki to Matapo. So we did some testing at the very start of as we were just going out to tender, and kind of got the extent of the coal tar in the carriageway there. It's now something that we pull forward and we actually do within the detailed design period, so that we have that information going out to the market.
So my apologies. We learnt the lessons, but we were already progressing this project. Okay. We did it as soon as we could. We did get it in ahead of the contractor being awarded, so we were ahead of the game more than we were. So it didn't, but it is still a cost to the project.
Yeah. Thank you. Any further questions? All right. So Jimmy, you'd like to move this? Do we have a seconder? Catherine? Thank you. Yep, so is there any debate? Jimmy?
Yeah, because this kind of the project also including those the water supply and wastewater, the infrastructure costs for 4 years. But during those construction time period, absolutely, because the community residents, they have a complaint, etc. But my view, staff and working together with those contractors done a great job, because by my understanding, they are public session. Every time they have any change, any further information, they just engage with the community board, update to us, and we feedback to them. Try to minimize all those reverse the effect. And also today we can, from the start, particularly now the driving time, actually I pass through every day. Actually driving time, we save a lot of the waiting time, because wireless very good bus, the priority, and also regarding the landscaping, beautify those this kind of heavy, very heavy the road, etc. So generally speaking, my understanding, but Catherine Chu, she is a local council, but I heard from the people is quite happy regarding this the new infrastructure and the project. So.
Thank you. Melanie.
I was at an Eddington meeting and an old man said, an old white man said he hated Riccarton Road the way it is now because he doesn't like the trees and it's too narrow to drive down. And I love it, and I think that you've done a good job of getting people like that to say those sorts of comments. Well done.
Thank you. This has been a long project by any project standards. Started in 2016, finished in 2020. I think the pictures that you showed us as part of the presentation today show us the clear amenity benefits. It's really tidied up that whole road area, made it far easier for drivers and people crossing the road and cyclists to use. So I think we would definitely call the project a success. I note that it also came in very slightly under budget, although we're not out of the defects period as yet. But certainly in terms of the community benefits, the safety benefits, the amenity benefits, this has been a success. Bringing a number of projects together in one construction certainly is generic of the way that we'd like to see things continue to be done. And the positive comments in the report regarding community engagement and stakeholder engagement leading to stakeholder and community support certainly are the kind of things that we'd want to see replicated in other projects, as we have in fact on the Victoria Street and Hereford projects since then. So a number of successes coming out of this, and just echoing Melanie's comments, my own reaction when seeing the completed project for the first time was very positive, and I've heard a number of anecdotal positive comments from people that use that road far more often than I do. So overall, I think we can call that a success. Thank you. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Now moving to item 13, the Otakaro Avon River Corridor, SEAT-funded Dallington Landing. So Kent and Andrew, welcome to the table.
Kia ora, councillors. Following on from the recent report to progress the 3 SEAT-funded bridges, we're pleased to present the next project, which is the SEAT-funded landing. Probably a couple of key things to just call out at the beginning. There's been really extensive and really good community engagement on this project, and sort of congratulations to Kent and his project team. The response to that has also been really, really positive and taken on board. Obviously, everything we're going to do in the ORAC, there's a degree of flood risk depending on where stopbacks end up and so forth. So just to reiterate that all the detailed design processes that follow obviously will take into account inundation events, be it 1 in 10, 1 in 25, 1 in 50 return events and so forth. So just so that you have confidence that those things are front of mind with all the planning and detailed design work that goes on from here. So over to questions now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions on this report? No questions? So, Phil, you're happy to move. Do we have a seconder? James, happy to second. So moved by Phil, seconded James. Is there any debate on this? when we approved the 3 bridges a few weeks ago, we talked about that being the first of a number of exciting developments that were happening to realise the benefits of the opportunities presented by the Otakaro Avon River corridor. This is yet another benefit that's presented by the opportunities that that area holds for us. It's great to see things progressing, and it's good to have this report in front of us today so that we can approve this next exciting stage. Put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Aaron, did you vote against that? Okay, so 1 vote against from Aaron. So
Len's next, and I have emailed him, but he's not here yet.
all right, they're the only 2 reports that we've got left to do. So we've got the Regenerate Christchurch annual report is the next item, item 15. Linda Gibbs not available today. Len Van Hout is going to be here in her place. Does anybody have any questions on this Regenerate Christchurch report? Okay, so we can take the report as read. I'm happy to move the resolution. Do I have a seconder? James? Any debate? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. And now we move to the item 16, V-Base Limited Annual General Meeting by Shareholder Resolution. This is largely, so Tim, you're sitting back as a Director of V-Base. This is largely procedural. I'm happy to move it. Mike, you're happy to second. There weren't any questions, no debates. All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. So I will now move the resolution to exclude the public. So if we can just get that in front of us. Okay, so we are allowing Paul and Leah of CCHL to remain for items 22 and 23, as they have knowledge that's relevant to that item and will assist the council. I'm happy to move that resolution. Do I have a seconder? Sam? All those in favour say aye. Against? That's carried.